This week on Jerusalem Dateline, we bring you an exclusive report from northeast Syria about the impact of President Trump's decision to pull U.S. troops out.
It is important to know and to understand that everything is at risk.
Plus, the seldom told story of a new representative form of government rising in the Middle East.
It's completely new in the Middle East, and I'd say it's completely new in the whole world.
And Christians in the crossfire, their warning of a new genocide and praying for help. Hello and welcome to this special edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. We're here in northeast Syria to examine the impact of the announcement of the pullout of U.S. troops from the region. We talk with military, governmental, and religious leaders. What we found out was a region on the brink of chaos, Christians afraid of another genocide, and the emergence of a representative form of government not seen before in the Middle East. The announcement by President Trump began a geopolitical tug-of-war over northeast Syria. Turkey to the north, Iran to the east, the Syrian government and the Russians to the west. Who wins this tug-of-war will help shape the future and fate of the Middle East. The main players are a threatening lineup: Turkey's President Erdogan, Russian President Putin, Syrian President Assad, and Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei, all wanting to fill any void left by the exit of U.S. troops. Their target? Leaders of a new, largely democratic government inside northeast Syria. It includes Christians, Arabs, Kurds, and other ethnic groups. They say Trump's surprise decision left them at the mercy of the larger nations around them.
The people in this area are very frightened by the decision of the American pullout because a lot of countries and militias are coveting the region east of the Euphrates to replace the American. Russia, the Assad regime, Iran and Turkey, or the Nusra Front that have declared publicly that they will support Turkey on their attack of the east of the Euphrates.
The decision by President Trump for the withdrawal of the U.S. troops was a decision not at a good time, and it wasn't coordinated with us if we are ready or not ready. This decision had really negative consequences on the Council.
Most see Turkey as their main threat.
Turkey is so dangerous because it has been the old and the new enemy for our people from the before the revolution and now. Erdogan wants to take our area to make it to him, related with the Turkish government.
Then Syria and Russia came courting, hoping to build a relationship. Yet if this new government were to align with Assad and Putin, the regional chess game could increase the threat to Israel. That's because an alliance between this newly formed government and Syria could provide Iran with a much larger route to transport weapons and supplies to Hezbollah in Lebanon. This would complete Iran's desire to build a land bridge to the Mediterranean. Israel is already fighting to keep Iran from basically transforming Syria into its own military base on Israel's northern border. Within just the past year, Israel has launched more than 200 strikes against Iranian targets within Syria. With both Israel and Iran promising to hit each other harder, any influx of weapons could turn this simmering conflict into all-out war. Iranian militias are also sitting on their border.
The Iranians, and with the support that they are providing to the Syrian regime, and with the thousands of foreign militias who they brought here and who are now waiting on the southern shores of the Euphrates River, who are ready to invade those places anytime the U.S. is going to leave. Of course, they are making a threat for the world people and even for the Christians. We have seen what the Iranian militias are doing against the Christians in Iraq, either it is Baghdad or in Mosul or Nineveh Plain.
Iran is the main enemy of the Syrian people. Iran is like cancer. What destroyed Syria is Iran.
SDF Commander Ahmed Musa warned of what the U.S. pullout might mean to Iran.
Simply put, the withdrawal of the American forces and the international alliance would enable the expansion of the Iranian and Persian Shiite crescent. The Iranian Shiite crescent from Tehran passing through Iraq, passing through Tadmur, would make this a belt, a region that would become Iranian. But if Iran expanded in, will affect the entire Middle East. and it will negatively impact the European countries.
Earlier this month, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo explained what happens when the U.S. leaves a power vacuum.
We learned that when America retreats, chaos often follows. When we neglect our friends, resentment builds. And when we partner with our enemies, they advance.
If the Americans go out and there's no agreement on the political front, for sure that's going to cause a lot of chaos in the area, and that chaos will cause a lot of conflict in the region.
Pompeo also said America is a force for good in the Middle East, and that's the ultimate hope of this new group of leaders.
Your partners have fought the terrorism and ISIS side by side with our United Syrian Democratic Forces alongside American forces. Now the war is still going on, and the Syrian Democratic Forces have given more than 8,000 martyrs for the sake of fighting ISIS. So how do you give up on them that easily?
We need more talks and discussions with the American administration and the American government to know what are the best steps for the future of the area and to guarantee the safety of all those different groups who are living here. I think it's the American administration needs to work on the decisions that they are taking, not only the withdrawal, but also the protection he is offering for the people of North and East Syria and for the protection of the Christians and the other religious minorities in Syria and Iraq.
While it remains to be seen who will win this tug of war and fill the void here, all indications are whoever prevails will help dictate the future course of the Middle East, Israel, and perhaps the world. Coming up, it's a new form of government. Some say it's a first in the Middle East.
I would say it's an indigenous model of democracy, and it's really working.
One of the major stories here in northeast Syria is the emergence of a representative form of government that represents all the peoples like the Kurds, Christians, and Arabs. It also preserves religious freedom and emphasizes the role of women. Called the Self-Administration of Northeast Syria, or SANS, it controls a third of Syria, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Some 4 million people live within its borders. After the Syrian revolution began in 2011, the Assad regime began to pull out of northeast Syria. Then the people of this region had to fight both Al-Qaeda and then ISIS. These two major developments led the people of this region to form a representative form of government not seen in the Middle East before.
Truly, as I have mentioned before, the self-administration of northeast Syria, and also in this management, all the minorities are from northeast Syria, from Kurds, Arabs, and Syrians, and Turkmen, and other minorities.
It's a federal system of government like the U.S. and makes the role of women a priority. The charter calls for 40% of the representative body to be women.
Of course, after the revolution in North and East Syria in 2011, the women in Syria in general, and especially in northeastern Syria, have proven themselves in all fields, and it started with joining the military by joining the Qasadic forces and the Syrian Democratic Forces in freeing much of the region side by side with the men. And it has also extended to administration. Certainly, a woman can free and support and join in all the campaigns, and she can also be perfect for administrative work.
Why the priority?
Because women are the half of the society. Men and women complete the society.
This village meeting is one of the regional women's centers designed to train women to play a role in society. They've also made a place for Christians.
Because this project is democratic, and for the first time it has recognized us as Syriac Christians and recognized our language, culture, and even our religion.
As Christians, I think this is our homeland and this is the cradle of Christianity eventually, and either with our language and culture that was the same language and culture of Jesus Christ, or even through our ability to pray, our ability to build our churches, our ability to gather together and to administrate our religious beliefs.
This Church of the Brethren is the only evangelical church in Kobani. One of the church leaders says this would never have been allowed under the Syrian regime. It's one more sign of the religious freedom under the self-administration of northeast Syria.
The region has given us permission in the context of the administration of northeast Syria, and like this we will continue. Concerning the church, we can express our rituals with complete freedom.
The new government wrote a social contract in 2014. In their preamble it states, "The charter proclaims a new social contract based upon mutual and peaceful coexistence and understanding between all strands of society. It protects fundamental human rights and liberties and reaffirms the people's right to self-determination."
It's completely new in the Middle East, and I'd say it's completely new in the whole world.
Freelance journalist Carlos Zurituza has covered this new government for several years.
What these people are actually doing is rebuilding themselves, starting from scratch after decades of repression by the Assad regime. So literally from day one, since 2012, since they liberated their territories, they are in the process of reconstructing civil society, integrating different components in the region, not just Kurds, it's Arabs, Armenians, Syriacs.
Zurituza says this unique experiment could be a bridge to the West.
It's very much an experiment which is going on, which is happening for the first time in history, which could spread throughout the region. Because outside here, there's literally nothing similar.
They look to the US and Europe as their inspiration.
I am fond of America. The American people are free. They are a democratic people. And as a region here, we want to create a model like the European countries as people, Muslim, Christians, Yazidis, create a community that is a small Europe in the Middle East.
As U.S. allies, they fought ISIS and lost thousands of men and women.
Today we have given up martyrs in this region. And the number of martyrs is what has given us the motivation to go back and fight. And we wish from the US President and we wish from the American people that they would not disappoint us and stand with us.
They want the US to play a role in this new democracy.
Truthfully, President Trump is a president of a great country. And we in northeastern Syria, along with the American army and the soldiers of the International Alliance, have accomplished much and gained globally. And not only for northeastern Syria, because we fought our biggest terror threat in the world. That's why the great country, USA, should play a role that supports independence and creates a political process that would serve all the minorities that are in northeastern Syria and Syria in general.
Yet Zurituza says this is a fragile democracy.
The Turkish border is right there. Erdogan has always made his plans very, very public. And the regime is controlling the city center here in Kamishlu. And there's also lots of jihadi factions, Islamists, Daesh fighting against ISIS, even if it's in its last pocket still going on.
The leaders say their hope is to spread this new democracy throughout Syria, rather than form another country. Whether it can survive long enough to make their dream come true remains to be seen. Up next, Christians caught in the crossfire.
So the man with weapons attacked my cousin's house and shot and killed his son.
A warning of a new genocide and praying for help. With the pullout of U.S. troops, Christians here in northeast Syria told us their future hangs in the balance. With the region on the brink of chaos, they're fearful and warning of a new genocide. Just a few years ago, ISIS left a scar on the land in the form of an historic genocide. Now Christians fear another potential apocalypse with enemies all around them.
All the countries and all of the regional countries who are interested in the Syrian situation, we see that Iran is in Syria, Turkey is in Syria, Russia is in Syria.
Turkey is the main concern.
After the threats of Erdogan to this region that he wants to take the place of the great force of America, we felt danger because of this void. If it was filled by the countries of this region or another power, there will be danger in general for the people, and especially the Christian people.
The reason many people in northeast Syria are afraid of Turkey is because of what happened last year in northwest Syria, the Turkish invasion of Afrin. In January 2018, its army, along with Islamic militias called the Free Syrian Army, began a military campaign to capture the city of Afrin. Charmaine Heading of the Shai Fund lays out the Turks' goals.
We know from what the statements that they've made that they want to get rid of the people in this area and bring in other people from Syria. So it's a population displacement.
Since last year, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported 350,000 people have been displaced, more than 2,600 kidnapped, along with widespread property confiscation and looting.
And because many of these Christians were originally Muslim background believers, they were particularly going to be targeted.
We have seen and we had reports about several cases of kidnapping, killing, stealing the property of the Christians, or kidnapping them, asking for ransom, or killing them. And that is all, I think, part of a program to empty the Middle East and to empty Syria from its original people and its native people who are, again, the Syrian Christians.
To find out more about the Afrin campaign, we traveled here to the city of Kobani and this evangelical church. Last year, Christians fled Afrin during the Turkish operation to take over the city. Some came here to Kobani to find refuge, security, and a place to worship. Zani pastors this church. He and his wife Shinar fled Afrin.
Everything in the church has been stolen. It's the terrorists' very natural behavior. They stole barrels of olive oil and everything, and they burned the church. And recently I have been speaking with a few believers in the church. They placed a lock and chain so no one could come near it.
Islamic soldiers allied with Turkey killed her cousin's child.
My cousin was in the house. There were a group of people with weapons that entered our neighborhood and they were stealing. So my cousin went out and asked them, "What are you doing? Don't steal what other people own." So the man with weapons attacked my cousin's house and shot and killed his son.
Turkish President Erdogan has threatened a similar campaign into northeast Syria. When Çınar heard about President Trump's decision, she prayed.
Our situation was very hard. It means we had prepared ourselves, prepared our suitcases, especially we Christians. In a fearful state, in sadness, every day we cried and prayed to the Lord that we would not end up like Afrin. There was a female believer in Afrin. She was kidnapped and they raped her and killed her. So we are afraid that what happened in Afrin would also happen in Kobani.
President Trump's decision surprised them.
We love the American president a lot, but when he made that decision to withdraw American troops, it was a strong shock. I have said that he is a believer and that he prays. And so I was surprised. Why did President Trump do this? That he immediately wants to withdraw the forces from here. Is it possible that he was not considering the church, or that he doesn't know that there are believers here?
This is the Turkish-Syrian border. Behind me, you can see the Turkish flag flying. One proposal is that Turkey would control a 20-mile security zone all along the Turkish-Syrian border. For most of the people we talked to said that would lead to a disaster.
Most of our Christian people lives in this area, and if any military operation happened in this area, it will be real fear on our people.
Recently, Erdogan stated when Manbij, Tel Rifat, two cities in northeast Syria, and regions east of the Euphrates would be cleared from militants, the millions of people will have a chance to return to their homes. Despite the threats, these Christians see themselves as indispensable to the Middle East.
We as Christians, our faith is in God's existence for sure. We always depend on God and on Jesus that He would give us strength. Today, Jesus gave us a word. You are the salt of the world. Today, we as Christians, if we are not in the Middle East, so the Middle East will be destroyed.
These Christians are looking to President Trump as the leader of the U.S. and as a fellow Christian.
What I know is that President Trump is a Christian and has this faith. Through him signing a law about protecting Christians in Iraq and Syria, that was a very big hope for us.
There are blessed believers in the American Congress and believers like Graham, and there are others. and we pray that God will place in their hearts that they would stand up and speak before the president, speak for democracy and the peace of the region.
President Trump slowed down his timetable to pull out U.S. troops, but for Christians here in northeast Syria, they are hoping and praying for much more than that. In an exclusive interview, CBN's David Brody and Jennifer Wishon asked White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders what President Trump would say to the Christians who are terrified in northeast Syria.
Well, sticking with policy, Sarah, lots of evangelicals are very supportive of what President Trump is doing, but many are terrified of his policy in Syria, his strategy there. And the president just today, tweeted that countries like Iran is a source of potential danger and conflict. There are a lot of Christians who feel like, the U.S. pulling out of Syria leaves them at the hands of countries like Iran. What do you say to those Christians?
Look, the president's made clear that we support Christians, that we support the Kurds. He's made that clear to Turkey. He's made that clear publicly on a number of fronts. And it's one of the reasons that the president has been tough on Iran, is to make sure that people don't feel threatened. We've supported the safe zones that are going to be very important. And the idea that the president is just stepping away and ignoring any potential problem doesn't understand the fundamental decision that he's made. He wants to bring our troops home out of Syria, but we're not leaving the region either. We're still going to have a presence in the region, but as much as we can continue to totally and completely destroy ISIS, the president wants our troops out of Syria, and he wants to be able to bring more of them back home to the United States.
CBN News traveled throughout northeast Syria and met some of the men and women on the front lines of a region in crisis. Some final thoughts when we come back. From Kobani to Kamishli, we traveled several hundred miles to hear the voices of the political, military leaders, Christians, and soldiers on the front lines of this geopolitical tug of war. We heard the hopes of a new form of government, the fears of a coming disaster, and pleas that even at this late date, the decision by President Trump could be reversed. They asked for support, for the world to recognize them, and asked for prayer. Please pray for these people, this region, and the future of one of the most strategic places on earth, from the Tigris to the Euphrates at this time in history. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.